Good evening, everyone. I'm Spot on Weather meteorologist Matthew Euler. Welcome to my latest Teleconnections discussion, and this one will be for the 4th of October, 2025. So let's go ahead and take a look first at what's going on here in the Northern Hemisphere with the shortwave troughs and the shortwave ridges. That's exactly what we're looking for here at the 500 millibar level. We look at these height anomalies, and where you see the orange colors, that indicates higher than normal heights, and typically with that is associated with upper level ridges. And with the orange colors, that usually leads to milder than normal and drier weather conditions, whereas the greens and the blues on this graphic represent upper level troughs where the heights are lower than normal. And within the troughs, we typically see more unsettled weather as well as cooler than normal conditions. So let's examine the northern hemisphere starting from the west, and we'll work our way left to right, west to east. There's an upper level trough that's positioned over northwest Russia with an upper level ridge north of Russia. So you got an upper level ridge here in the upper left hand portion of this diagram or this graphic with the orange color over the top of this trough, the trough there over northwest Russia. There is an upper level ridge over northeastern China, and there's another upper level trough there across the northwestern Pacific. Extending north, you see the trophy conditions here, the trophiness extending all the way up towards just to the southwest or west of Alaska, east of the Kamchatka Peninsula, you see troughing. And then there is an upper level ridge from the north central Pacific, right on north, extending north towards the Aleutian Islands, with a trough downstream, generally just to the southeast of the ridging there over the Aleutian Islands. There's an upper level ridge, generally positioned over the northeastern Pacific and extending northward into the Gulf of Alaska, and an upper level trough approaching the Pacific Northwest, with an upper level ridge then downstream from that trough across the central plains of the United States, right up to southeastern Canada. This ridge, by the way, is really resulting in abnormally warmer than normal temperatures for the upper Midwest, as well as parts of the Ohio Valley today. There is an upper level trough generally positioned in this green color across the western North Atlantic, with ridging downstream of that trough extending into Portugal and Spain. You'll notice a deep upper level trough generally positioned closed low to the southeast of Greenland, but extending southwestward into that North Atlantic trough. Additionally, we have the ridging, like I mentioned, into Portugal and Spain, and another very deep trough across Europe. We have a closed upper level low position there over Central Europe, and above that, generally to the north of that, we have strong upper level ridging or higher than normal heights over northern Europe as well as northwest of Siberia. So that's the way things look right now across the northern hemisphere. If we look at the Mad-Julian oscillation MJO phases, generally the MJO, it ranges from phase 1, where you get enhanced convection there in the vicinity of Madagascar. MJO phases 2 and 3, we see enhanced convection in the Indian Ocean. With MJO phases 4 and 5, that's typically the convection is located in the vicinity of the maritime continent known as Australia. And then we get to MJO phases 6, 7, and 8. That is more the enhanced convection of the MJO across the western tropical Pacific Ocean right up to the international dateline. And also 8 is over here on the far left there to the west coast of South Africa. All right, so now I changed the temperature composites here on the left since we're now in the month of October. So now we're looking at the temperature composites for September, October, and November. And you'll notice the phases in the MJO, they mean different things for the temperature anomalies. For example, the orange colors indicate above normal temperatures and the blue coloring indicates below normal temperatures. So MJO phase 1 is a milder phase across the eastern United States, whereas MJO phase 2, suddenly things get a little bit cooler across the deep south and the eastern United States. And then we go all the way over to MJO phase 7 and 8, fairly mild pattern for the mid-Atlantic and the eastern seaboard of the United States as a whole. Over here on the right, we take a look at the Jeffs V12 and look at the latest MJO forecast. And look at all the solid lines again, the black, the red, and the blue. This MJO forecast for Jeffs goes out to the 17th of October, but in general, the small inner circle means that the MJO is fairly weak and non-impactful in this null phase. Very little change is anticipated all the way up to the 17th of October. Now you'll notice these yellow lines here. This is the different forecast members of the ensemble model. And there are possibilities MGO works its way out to 8 in phase 1 over time. But we'll see what happens. Right now, the consensus is for the MGO to remain fairly weak and not impactful right on through the 17th of October for the United States weather. We look at the CFS V2 extended bias corrected MJO forecast through the 1st of November. Again, very similar, right? Very similar to the Jeffs, where we have the majority of these lines consolidated in the small inner circle of the MJO phase diagram, which indicates very non-impactful type scenarios. And the same is over here, the Bureau of Meteorology model, the BOM from Australian Bureau of Meteorology. Look at where all the lines are again, generally concentrated within the center of the diagram in this small inner circle. So both the CFS V2, the BOM extended, all indicating MJO to remain fairly weak and really not much of a factor in dictating what's going to happen downstream across the United States. We do have a little bit of difference here in the middle model, the European, the ECMWF MJO forecast out to 17 October. And you'll notice this blue line, how we're working our way on the 13th of October, the 15th, and the 17th of October, more into an MJO phase 1. So that is a little bit of an outlier compared to all the other models I took a look at. So we'll see what happens, with the European, with the other models as well here in the coming days to see if they kind of work their way and budge towards European MJO forecast and do a phase 1 perhaps, or whether we stay mainly in the small inner circle here, the phase diagram. But in general, right now we have high confidence to say that the MJO signals are generally weak over the next 2 weeks with minimal influence for U.S. weather. If we look at the latest water temperature anomalies here from the NOAA Coral Reef Watch daily 5-kilometer product here, this was the latest one I could pull was the 2nd of October 2025. So this would be Thursday. Look at the marine heat wave that's still ongoing across the northwestern Pacific. You see the darker orange colors and even the darker colors. That's indicative of very, very much above normal. We're talking anywhere from 5 degrees Celsius and warmer than that even in some of these dark areas of these water temperatures. Sea of Japan has been boiling just to the west of the Japan area there, as well as parts of just the west of Korea, out in the western Pacific north of Taiwan. Extremely above normal water temperatures. We do see also above normal water temperatures there just to the east and southeast of the Canadian Maritimes. We do see the signature of a developing La Nina. Once again, the blue colors indicating below normal water temperatures, and you clearly see that trademark signature of where these below normal temperatures are in that Nino 3.4 region. Look off the U.S. West Coast too. I forgot to mention this, but also still significantly above normal water temperatures off the U.S. West Coast. By the way, the daily Southern Oscillation Index is running. I took a look at the daily SOI yesterday afternoon, and I got a reading of plus or positive 5.48, which is still more indicating neutral conditions across the tropical eastern and central Pacific. But those trade winds have begun to increase somewhat, the easterly trade winds in this tropical wind belt. And that's typically what you get with La Nina conditions is the trade winds are going to increase. The top layer of water is going to be pushed westward towards the western ocean basin here in the tropical Pacific. And then you're getting upwelling, cooler water coming up from beneath the surface with the strong trade winds. So we'll continue to watch this. And I'll get into this La Nina discussion here in a moment. Here is the ENSO intensity classifications again. Well, what are we really looking at is that Nino 3.4, this rectangle shape here, this box. And these are the classifications of the various El Nino and La Nina categories from weak, moderate, strong, and neutral conditions. Again, just mentioning the 3.4 Nino region box or that rectangle, it's bounded by these latitude and longitude coordinates. So in general, a weak La Nina, for example, we would see zero point 0.5 to 0.9 degrees Celsius below normal temperature anomalies in the water in this Nino 3.4 region with a weak La Nina. If we went to a strong La Nina, on the other hand, we would see a much more significant cooling of those waters. A strong La Nina would mean that water temperatures running 1.5 to 1.9 degrees Celsius below normal in this area. All right, so let's take a look at the latest ENSO forecast. Again, not much change. This is the same graphics I had last week and even the previous week from last week, 2 weeks ago. In general, what we're looking at is the blue bars are indicating probability of La Nina. The gray bar indicates ENSO neutral conditions. And so you can clearly see as we go through the winter, the chances of El Nino are very, very minimal. So we're really just looking at the blue bar and the gray bars here. And the blue bars, when they're taller than the gray bars, that indicates we have a higher probability of La Nina. The blue bar represents La Nina conditions. The gray bar, ENSO neutral. So you see how tall the blue bar is. The probabilities are over here on the left-hand side, running from 0 to 100% probability. So yeah, as we head into the fall, we're looking at a 60% chance of La Nina and only 39% chance of ENSO neutral. And eventually, the blue bar shrinks in height, right? As we get to December, January, and February, the winter months, now we have a 50% chance of La Nina and about a 46% chance of ENSO neutral. And then by January, February, March, that's that transition zone again. Models are indicating a transition to ENSO neutral conditions. By that time frame in January, we're looking at a taller gray bar, which indicates higher chances or probability for ENSO neutral conditions over La Nina. And that trend just continues into next spring, where ENSO neutral conditions are really going to be the main player as we get into next spring. And then also as we get towards summertime, you'll notice the red bar starts growing a little taller by next summer, which would indicate that El Nino probability is starting to increase a little bit more. Over here on the right-hand side, these are the statistical and dynamical models, generally showing you the solid green line and the solid maroon line, showing you the average of the statistical and dynamical models. That maroon line is the average of the dynamical models. The green line is the average of the statistical models. But anyway you cut this, it's looking like, the dynamical models dip the water temperatures in the Nino 3.4 region down to about minus 0.5 to minus 0.6 degrees Celsius. That's the statistical models, the green line. Dynamical models run the water temperatures a little bit cooler, okay, the dynamical models. So that runs at about minus 0.7 degrees Celsius. So that would fit. The models are generally indicating that we're most likely looking at this kind of water temperature departure from normal, cooler than normal waters, running from 0.5 to 0.9 degrees Celsius to start the winter season coming up. And that is, again, looking at these water temperatures in this Nino 3.4 region. If we look at these are the probabilities now, percent of La Nina, neutral, and El Nino, and you can see how low the probability percentages are for El Nino. So we won't even discuss this El Nino column at all. Really, what we look at is La Nina versus the neutral for this fall and the upcoming beginning of the winter season here. And you see how La Nina has the higher probabilities. October, November, December, 60 to 39. November, December, January, it's 59% to 40%, right? La Nina has a much higher probability. By the time we get to December, January, and February, there it is, 50% probability for La Nina, 46% for ENSO neutral. January, February, March, that's where it turns. 40% chance of La Nina, while now we're up to a 55% chance for ENSO neutral conditions. So this is really the key point to watch. Highest probability for La Nina during the early winter, transitioning to ENSO neutral conditions during January of 2026. We look at the latest quasi-biennial QBO, the quasi-biennial oscillation update. We can clearly see that the QBO is in the easterly phase easterly descending phase, where the blue solid line here are the different, these dots represent the different plots of these radio sound observations. When the weather balloon is released, it goes up in the atmosphere and it's measuring your temperature, your pressure, humidity, and the wind directions and speeds with height. And when we have an easterly phase QBO, that means the winds are more from the east over the equator in the stratosphere. So we have easterly stratospheric winds over the equator with the easterly QBO phase, and we clearly see where this blue solid line is. It's basically on the negative side of this particular. These are the millibar pressure levels of the sounding itself, of the balloon launch sounding. So there you go. So we're looking at, and why do we care that QBO is in the easterly phase? Again, I'll reemphasize this. Uh, if in the easterly phase, it favors a weaker wintertime stratospheric polar vortex and a negative phase of the North Atlantic Oscillation. Now, I'm not looking at hey, are we having a La Nina, or how does easterly phase the QBO work in El Nino versus La Nina as an example? I do need to do some more digging into that, but this is just a general statement from research that I found and looked up. Let's now look at the actual teleconnections forecast now. Some interesting trends this week. Let's look at the AO first. AO forecast. I'm not going to rehash this every video I make. Feel free to go back and look at my last teleconnections discussion. Just one thing, to really realize here with a negative Arctic oscillation, it's much colder in the eastern portion of the United States with a negative AO. Whereas over on the right-hand side with a positive AO, it's a completely different story. We have milder conditions from the Pacific coast of the United States right over to the east coast of the United States. More of this mild westerly wind flow across the U.S. Most and all the cold, really all the cold air, Arctic air, is bottled up over the Arctic during a positive AO phase. It's not really moving south into the United States in this case. The polar vortex in the stratosphere is fairly strong as well when we see a positive AO. When we see a negative AO, that polar vortex can descend further towards the southeast off the pole. So that's really your big difference. All right, so let's take a look now at the European EPS AO 50 per term member forecast out to about the 18th of October. And notice the solid green line here. Just follow this with me. The solid green line is the average of all the 50 per term members of this ensemble forecasting system, the European model ensemble. So we're starting off positive for the AO on this model run all the way up through the 11th of October. Then we go towards neutral conditions near the zero line here down the center of the diagram. And then we go to slightly negative conditions from 12 to 18 October. If we look at the European EPS AO 50 per term member forecast out through about the 16th of November, notice we're on a trend where we have a positive AO, and that's going to go through about the 12th of October. Then the AO transitions to mainly neutral, 13 October, all the way out to 16 November. So you notice this green line, how it just kind of straddles the zero line here, right? Whenever it's straddling the zero line, that indicates that we have near neutral conditions. We look at the NOAA Jeffs V12 AO 30 per term member forecast. We have a positive AO through about the 11th of October, and then it kind of drops it goes neutral briefly from 12 to 13 October in this zone, and then it drops negative from the 14th to the 19th of October. Let's now examine the North Atlantic Oscillation, the NAO forecast. Again, I'm not going to rehash everything. You clearly can see what's going on here with a negative NAO here on the left. Arctic air is coming basically from the North Pole and Siberia all the way down into the eastern portion of the United States. We have a strong blocking upper high, strong ridge there across the North Atlantic with a negative NAO, and that works its way north towards Greenland. And then we have another deep trough into northwestern and northern Europe. So really cold across Europe, really cold across the eastern United States with a negative NAO. Additionally, over here on the right, we're showing a positive NAO, different story. We have mild conditions across the United States. We have milder conditions across Europe. The coldest air remains up over Greenland and up over the Arctic area with a positive NAO. We look now at the European EPS NAO 50 per term member forecast. We see that the NAO is going to be strongly, follow the green line here, we're in positive values here. That indicates we have a strongly positive NAO forecast through the 11th of October, according to this model, the EPS, and then the NAO turns negative from 12 to 18 October. We look at the European EPS NAO 50 per term member forecast out to the 16th of November, strongly positive NAO. Right on through the 12th of October, and then we go neutral from 13 October right on to the 16th of November. Followed by the NOAA Jeffs V12 NAO 30 per term member forecast, strongly positive NAO right on through the 11th of October, transitions to negative. See this drop to the negative territory? We're below the zero line into negative territory. Look at that, the average, that green line of all the ensemble members. And you notice these little plots, these blue bars, these blue vertical bars represent basically out in time where the NAO could actually be residing. It could be up here, it could be down here. But right now we use the average, that green line showing that we're transitioning to a negative NAO. And I did look at the 500 millibar height anomalies today, and it definitely appears that way, that we're heading that way here a little bit later into October. All right, let's look at the Pacific North American PNA forecast. A big thing here is positive PNA, warmer west, colder east of the U.S. Okay, colder western U.S. with a positive PNA with ridging, and then a colder eastern U.S. with troughing. Okay, over here on the right is a negative PNA. We just flip it now. Where the lower the normal heights are, and the troughing is over the western U.S. with a negative PNA. Below average temperatures with the trough out west, and then a ridge and above average temperatures across the eastern U.S. with a negative PNA. So let's examine and see what this PNA is looking like now. The European EPS PNA 50 per term member forecast out through the 18th of October, showing a negative phase of the PNA. Look at this. Oh, wow. Look at this dip here, this green line, how it dips down, and then it really stays fairly strongly negative, the PNA, according to the EPS model here. It doesn't really recover closer to neutral really until the 17th to 18th of October. So a negative PNA in this case, look at what we'd have typically. We'd have the trough in the western U.S. with the colder temperatures out west, and we'd have milder temperatures and more ridging in the eastern United States. So this model would basically suggest that, right? If we look at the European EPS PNA 50 per term member forecast out to the 16th of November, again, strongly negative PNA is showing up on this model as well. Right on negative PNA right on through the 26th of October, then neutral from the 27th of October to about the 6th of November, then slightly negative again from 7 to 16 November. Look at the NOAA Jeffs V12 PNA 30 per term member forecast. We're starting off negative throughout the whole, really not even starting. We're staying negative from the 3rd, yesterday, the 3rd of October, all the way out to the 19th of October. Completely negative phase of the PNA. Now, when it kind of rises here around the 7th of October, this green line kind of goes up closer to the zero line towards neutral. It's not so sharply negative, but there are some drop-offs at times on the negative side. Let's now examine the Eastern Pacific Oscillation, the EPO forecast. Negative EPO, we get a strong upper level ridge and strong upper level high into the Gulf of Alaska. The ridge axis extending north into mainland Alaska. There is an upper level low and troughing there to the southeast of the Hawaiian Islands. So basically we've got a high, an upper level high over an upper level low. A ridge in the Gulf of Alaska over the top of a trough down towards the Hawaiian Islands. And when we get this to happen, what happens is the storm track is forced up and over this huge ridge in the Gulf of Alaska. The jet stream is forced up and over this huge ridge, and then the jet stream kind of makes this big dip into the northern plains and the Midwest, and that cold air bleeds eastward to the East Coast. You get strong Arctic highs, you get more of the cross-polar flow with a negative EPO. Now, if we have a positive EPO, I like to think of a positive EPO as what we would typically expect. We typically expect a stronger Aleutian low in the late fall and winter season here in the Gulf of Alaska. And then we'd have the higher heights or the upper level highs generally to the south, straddling the Hawaiian Islands latitude belt. So you'd have an upper level low to the north in the Gulf of Alaska over upper level high or higher than normal heights in the tropical areas there towards Hawaii. That's with a positive EPO. Notice how mild the weather is across the United States when the positive EPO occurs. We get more of a west to east jet stream, mild Pacific air from west coast to east coast. All the cold air tends to be bottled up with a positive EPO over Greenland, over parts of the Arctic Ocean, the Arctic in general. So now let's look at the model forecast European EPO 50 per member forecast through the 18th of October. Wow, this is interesting, everybody. What do we say about the negative EPO over here on the left? We typically have a strong upper level high ridging into the Gulf of Alaska, and we get a trough downstream from the ridging into central Canada and then dipping down into the United States. And look at what we got here. We have a negative EPO. This thing really dips. The 5th of, into negative territory, really dips down pretty good. The 5th and the 6th of October, it kind of recovers a little bit, but then it dips down even more strongly negative around the 9th of October, recovers a little bit, dips negative again around the 12th and 13th of October, and then works its way up closer to neutral by the 17th and 18th of October. But this is one heck of a strongly negative EPO here. Now, if we look at the European EPO 50 per member forecast out to the 16th of November, look at this crash of this green line into the negative values. See that? We are in strong negative territory for the EPO all the way out through about the 16th of October. And then we go slightly positive 16th of October, right on through, slightly positive to neutral. We have positives, slightly positive through the 6th of November, and then more towards neutral conditions between the 6th and the 16th of November. Finally, the Jeffs V12 EPO 30 per member forecast out to the 19th of October. I mean, all the models are showing this strongly negative EPO. I mean, look at this. And then it finally recovers up closer to neutral and maybe even slightly positive here, 15 to 19 October, according to the Jeffs V12 model. But strongly negative EPOs, and look at this, negative Eastern Pacific oscillation. I mean, higher atmospheric heights, pressures, and temperatures in the northeastern Pacific and Alaska. And then you get, this favors warm weather in Alaska. It's a cold pattern for most of the lower 48 of the United States. And there's that cross-polar flow from Siberia right on over the top of the ridge. And there you have it. So we have to keep a close eye on this one. When these teleconnections go either super strongly positive or super strongly negative, it grabs my attention for sure. All right, so now let's examine the latest stratospheric polar vortex update. Now, this was from yesterday evening, but not much has really changed. What we're looking at here, these white solid lines are height contours in the upper atmosphere. We're looking at about 30 hectopascal level, 30 millibar pressure level, well above the Earth's surface. We do see this circular elliptical type looking pattern. This is our polar vortex in the stratosphere right now. You see the blue coloring indicates colder stratospheric temperatures, and then you see the yellows and the mustard color indicates warmer temperatures in the stratosphere. So in general, the polar vortex continues to slowly strengthen across the Arctic region. Now let's examine the EPS 500 millibar height anomalies. We'll start here in the upper left for the 3rd of October 2025. This was yesterday evening. We had a trough moving ashore into the western United States. There's an upper level ridge. Again, I just saw the record highs in some of these areas here. Minnesota, Chicago yesterday was 89 degrees at O'Hare Airport, which is running 20 degrees Fahrenheit above normal for early October. I mean, we're talking some pretty impressive warmth in association with this ridge, which works its way towards southeastern Canada. We do see troughing across the North Atlantic Ocean. Over here on the right-hand side, we move ahead now to the forecast for Monday. This upcoming Monday, the 6th of October, we see upper level heights building or rising there. Association with this ridge, generally poking into Western Canada and then extending north into parts of the Northwest Territories and even further north into the Arctic. A trough is protruding down into central Canada. And then we see a really massive, pretty good strength ridge here just off the eastern seaboard, surface high pressure also off the coast. So the combination of these two are really going to result in some milder temperatures across first the Midwest and then working our way east to the eastern seaboard up towards New England. Over in the bottom left here, we're showing the 500 millibar height anomaly forecast for the 9th of October, next Thursday. You see the brown colors indicate very strong upper level ridging, upper level high pressure here, higher heights. Extending northeastward into southern Alaska. This is going to make Alaska pretty mild. For next Thursday, the 9th of October, we see downstream troughing, more of a positive tilted trough, generally coming ashore there around Seattle, Washington. And then we still see some above normal heights in the same locations, south central Canada and into the upper Midwest and upper plain states. We do see an upper level trough, which is forecast to be located from Greenland, extending southeastward with a trough axis into the Canadian Maritimes. Finally, over here on the right, we still see the continuation of this strong upper level, abnormally higher than normal heights or ridging in that northeastern Pacific area into Alaska. So it's going to be milder in Alaska, it looks like, for late next week and into this one here in the bottom right is for next weekend. This is Sunday, the 12th of October, 2025. We see where the troughing is really centered over the Pacific Northwestern United States. This is where that green color is really where we're going to have below normal temperatures and more unsettled showery type precipitation. And we see a nice, massive 588 decameter upper high position over Texas by next Sunday, the 12th of October. And we see ridging again. It just doesn't end across the upper Midwest. Wisconsin, Michigan, Minnesota, Iowa, Northern Illinois, Indiana. This area is just running above normal. We do see some upper level heights now rising and working their way. The ridge axis starting to extend towards Greenland at this point in time. Now, this would be the beginning of that negative NAO that we showed in those in the NAO teleconnection forecast. All right, so here's my final thoughts in today's video. The MJO continues to remain in the null phase or non-impactful phase, minimal influence on the United States weather through the 17th of October. But let's watch the European, the ECMWF. It is a one outlier model showing potentially weaker MJO phases, slightly into 8 and definitely into 1 between 11 and the 17th of October. So let's keep an eye on that European model. We do see ENSO neutral conditions that are present across the tropical eastern and the central Pacific Ocean. But we do see a positive 5.48 daily SOI, Southern Oscillation Index. One thing I did notice on the CDAS data, the water temperatures were in excess of 1 degree Celsius below normal, according to CDAS in that Nino 3.4 region last week. But now this week, they're warming a little bit here. We're now at minus 0.93 degrees Celsius below normal water temperatures in that Nino 3.4 region. So we are seeing a little bit of an uptick or warming in those waters in that Nino 3.4 region. So let's continue to watch this. I did take a look at it today as well before this video, and it was, I believe it was minus 0.81 C now. So there's some slight warming going on in the Nino 3.4 region. So let's continue to watch. Overall, the rest of the globe, as far as sea surface temperature anomalies, specifically the northern hemisphere, we see warmer than normal water temperatures across the North Pacific Ocean, around Japan specifically. We're talking about the marine heat wave continuing. And then off the U.S. West Coast, we see a pretty significant warmer than normal water temperatures. And then warmer than normal waters east of the Canadian Maritimes. Cooler than normal waters are located across the equatorial tropical Pacific with the developing La Nina. As far as the models and what they're indicating, a positive Arctic oscillation or AO through the 12th of October. Now, when it's a positive AO, what does that mean? A positive phase AO favors above average temperatures across the United States, milder readings. Now, it is showing a neutral to slightly negative AO transition through the 19th of October. So after the 12th through the 19th, our AO comes down to neutral to slightly negative. Now, a neutral phase of the AO favors near average temps and a more zonal west to east type jet stream with weaker, faster moving pressure systems, both high and low pressure systems into and out of areas. A positive phase of the AO, by the way, would favor above average temps. I think I already mentioned that. Now, the negative phase of the AO, on the other hand, would represent or bring in cooler than average temps across the eastern U.S. Right, models are indicating a strongly positive NAO, North Atlantic Oscillation, through 12 October. The NAO is positive, the AO is positive, they're kind of matching up. The NAO much more strongly positive, though. Then the NAO turns negative from 13 to 18 October. Now, with that strongly positive phase, that would favor positive phase. The NAO favors above average temps across the eastern United States. If the NAO is in a negative phase, though, that favors cooler than average temps and troughing along the eastern seaboard, as well as with a very strong blocking upper level high and ridge there into Greenland over the Northwest Atlantic in general. All right. Models are indicating a negative Pacific North American P&A pattern through the 19th of October. Plain and simple, a negative P&A. That favors the trough and the cooler than normal temperatures in the western U.S. A negative P&A favors ridging and warmer than normal temperatures for the eastern U.S. So that's the importance of a negative P&A. And it's really not showing much change through the 19th of October, according to the models. The models are indicating a strongly negative Eastern Pacific Oscillation, EPO, through 17 October. This turns slightly positive the 18th and 19th of October. Now, a negative EPO and how strongly negative it is, this favors colder than average temperatures from the northern plains to the east coast of the United States. More the troughing from the northern plains to the east coast. Get upper level ridging over the western U.S. and western Canada with a positive EPO or a negative EPO. Positive EPO, on the other hand, favors upper level trough across Alaska and the Bering Sea with a downstream ridge and warmer than average temps from the northern plains to the east coast. Now, models are indicating a slowly strengthening stratospheric polar vortex in the middle of October with increasing zonal mean zonal winds and cooling stratospheric temperatures. And again, we expect that to occur this time of year with the stratospheric polar vortex, a gradual strengthening of that. So the final results from everything I showed you, right? And I'm really focused on the eastern United States. So that's why I have eastern United States at the top here. This is for the east. But I can also kind of apply it to the western U.S. if you live there. The overall assessment, positive AO, is going to favor warmer than average temps through the 12th of October. But then we have a negative AO after the 12th of October, right on through the 19th. Now that would favor a transition from warmer than average temps to cooler than average temps for the eastern U.S. Positive NAO, that favors warmer than average temps through 12 October as well. Then it transitions to a negative NAO, which favors cooler than average temps from the 13th to the 18th of October. We are seeing that negative P&A, which favors above average temps for the eastern United States. And we're seeing that right now, okay? With a negative P&A, let's look at this here real quick. Look with a negative P&A, where's the trough at on these four diagrams? Western U.S., Western U.S., Pacific Northwest, but generally towards the Western U.S., right? And then definitely here, the bottom right. See that? The troughing, the green and the blues. The trough is in the west. And you're seeing a lot of ridging in the east. And that is what we would typically see with that negative P&A. The ENSO neutral conditions are in place, which favors near average temperatures, non-impactful MJO, as I mentioned, through the middle of October. And then the La Nina is forecast to develop from fall and early winter. Now, what I'm anticipating is a warmer than average period from 6 to 8 October as an upper level ridge influences the eastern seaboard. But then I think it's going to turn briefly cooler on 9 and 10 October. Just a brief transition to cooler than normal temperatures. I believe the biggest influencers of all the teleconnections are the strongly positive NAO through the 12th of October and the strongly negative EPO, Eastern Pacific Oscillation, to the 17th of October. Now, what's interesting is, strongly positive NAO versus a strongly negative EPO. That would mean that we'd have higher heights, or actually lower heights across Greenland. We'd have lower heights and troughing favored across the North Atlantic. We have more zonal west-east flow across the eastern U.S. With a negative EPO, what that's telling me is, which one of these two, the EPO would be more of an influencer there in the Pacific, North Pacific, right? So these two teleconnections are acting in opposite directions. So again, positive NAO, that favors warmer than average temps for the eastern U.S., while negative EPO favors cooler than average temps for the eastern U.S. So which of these two is kind of the more dominant of the two? Or do they just completely wash each other out and we kind of sit in more average temperature territory there as we go from 12 to like the 17th of October timeframe? So let's keep watching these two. They seem like they're very strong in magnitude, the NAO and the EPO. So let's continue to watch through the 17th of October there. Let's see what happens. The stratospheric polar vortex, the SPV, continues to slowly strengthen with cooling stratospheric temperatures. All right, that wraps things up on the latest video here for the Teleconnections discussion. I really hope you learn a lot from these videos. I try to break them down so, anybody who doesn't really even know the weather can kind of understand what these mean. And it's fun to really track these teleconnections, really watch them and see how they change over time, whether they're rising or falling. So, bottom line here, this is what happens with teleconnections. They kind of set things up as far as, where is the jet stream at, where are the troughs at, where are the ridges at, where are these high pressures at, the above normal temperatures, where are these low pressures at with the storms and the cooler than normal temps, and what part of the northern hemisphere do these set up? Teleconnection is really coming to play there. So that's all I got for now, everybody. My plan is to resume the daily weather forecast this upcoming Monday. In the meantime, check my website out. And I keep updating that regularly with the 7-day outlook for Hampton Roads. A lot of other cool weather stuff on there as well, even if you don't live in the Hampton Roads area. So that's all I got for now, everybody. Hope you're enjoying your Saturday and enjoy the rest of your weekend. Until next time, take care and God bless everyone.